face that.
Hello, welcome back to Ycft. Sam is obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I'm okay.
So we're delving into.
I was obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio.
So annoyingly, we don't have the DVD or Blu-ray version. I know where we both have. We both own the copy separately.
We both do. I also have the book, which I couldn't find. I also couldn't find the DVD. So here's just a few of the DVDs from my Leo collection that I have.
We are talking about Shutter Island,
Yeah.
released in 2010, directed by Martin Scorsese. So it was not the first time they worked together. Interesting, you told me. They made this film while they were trying to make Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, they were trying to get funding for Wolf of Wall Street.
And that was made back in 2008, came out 2010. Yep. Now, considering how popular Wolf of Wall Street actually was, they had to make a film in between to be able to get it made.
Yeah, exactly.
If anything, I think they needed to let Leo age a bit before he did that role.
Probably. I love this film. I love Shutter Island. It's not an easy watch necessarily, but I think as a film, it's stellar. Like, it's so well made. Every single part of it, I think, comes together really, really well. It's based off the 2003 novel by Dennis Lehane. And admittedly, I read the book several years ago. But from what I do recall, and I think from what a lot of the cast and crew have said, is that the film Shutter Island is very, very faithful to the novel. Like, very few changes were made at all, which is a testament to the book, I think, really, as well. They didn't have to heavily adapt it. Yeah,
and you also think that Leo was a bit miscast in this one.
Well, okay.
Whereas I don't. I really like him in this role, and I think he does a fantastic job.
This is where people are going to probably hate me for this. Like, look, no one loved Leonardo DiCaprio more than I. It was a lifetime obsession. He will always be my first love. I still always enjoy watching his films. My problem started with Gangs of New York. Because...
Stellar film.
Because I feel that...
Stellar film.
When Leo works with Scorsese, that's when things kind of fall apart for me. Because I'm not denying that the films themselves are good. I just don't think that Leo does the tough guy particularly well. And I know I've probably worded it in a way that makes it feel like he was miscast in this, probably because I think I actually said I think Leo is miscast in this.
You did.
It's not that I don't think he's good in this at all. I just also think that you could replace him with any other really decent actor of a similar caliber and age, and the film would still be brilliant.
But isn't that just a sign of a good film?
Yes, it's a good film.
There's some films that are only good because an actor elevates them.
Yeah.
But the film is just good all around him.
Leo, I totally buy Mark Ruffalo as, a Bostonian cop. I totally buy Ben Kingsley as,
Ben Kingsley is
mesmeric,
everybody does.
Charismatic doctor. I buy all the other cast. It's a bit of a stretch for me to, buy Leo as some broad-shouldered, tough Bostonian cop.
Federal agent.
Federal marsh.
Federal marsh.
I
love his Boston accent.
I don't think Leo is particularly good with accents either.
We are duly appointed federal marshals. We are required to carry our firearms with us at all times.
But anyway, that's me. I still love the film, and as I say, I have a complicated relationship with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well,
I've said my piece.
You're wrong.
Hey, you're kidding me.
She's never once in 2 years acknowledged that she's in an institution.
My opinion is wrong.
I appreciate it, but this channel ends this week now, apparently.
Yes, apparently so.
I love him in this role.
Yeah.
But like I said, the film...
He does a decent job.
Frankly, the film around him is fantastic.
Strong.
It's stellar.
Yeah. It
From
really
a VFX standpoint as well, there's a lot of really, really good invisible VFX throughout this entire film that I just really like. There's a lot of what you wouldn't expect to be green screen is green screen, and there's just a lot of really good compositing going on there, especially with a lot of windows and added rain to it, and stuff that you don't notice, and that's what makes it good.
Well, the question that we really wanted to raise with this video is Shutter Island a horror film, or is it not?
Really? Roger Ebert says it is.
Roger Ebert...
But also gave it a good review.
Yeah. The man who famously detested horror, basically shat on every single one he reviewed, bar a handful. He was singing this film's praises when it was released. And yeah, he did call it a horror movie. But I do find it interesting that, you know, for a lot of people, this film won't be a horror. Roger Ebert found, like, arguably the most subtle horror film really engaging. It's like, I think if this film had pushed its horror elements even just a little bit more, Ebert would have been like, no, I'm out. But the fact that it just kind of teases the genre without outrightly...
There's certain sequences, especially a lot of, like, the flashbacks, the dreams, even, like, the sequences, like, in one of the wards, if you put some different music behind it, although the score is, like, fantastic for this, if you get some, like, sharper music, different editing style, maybe slightly different colour grading, that's a horror movie then.
It's
the
a
content
horror movie.
You could take the content that is there right now and cut it to be a horror movie.
Yeah.
All the pieces are there for it.
Absolutely.
And I think the story would lend itself really well to it.
Yeah. I think on the surface, this film, it's a psychological thriller, it's a mystery film. Those are probably the two main elements. It's horror adjacent, I guess. Like, that's a phrase that a lot of people tend to use. It's certainly got some disturbing moments in it, and I don't think anybody can deny that what Leonardo DiCaprio's character goes throughout the film, it is basically a waking nightmare. Like, you wouldn't wish that situation on anybody.
Yeah.
So that's the angle that we're going to try and take.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of the return of our horror or not.
Return of the horror.
I thought we were going to do a lot more of these than we did, but it just...
Well, I thought this would be a really good idea for one, because you can have arguments for, you can have arguments against. Probably goes without saying that we're going to spoil the shit out of this movie as well.
Yeah.
Like, the ending, we're going to dissect everything we're going to talk about. We kind of have to. Should we go over the basic plot?
Yeah, so obviously the film opens him on the ferry heading towards Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Where this famed mental institute is.
Yeah.
Impossible to escape from, one way on, one way off.
Yeah.
A patient has escaped, evaporated straight through the walls.
It's as if she evaporated straight through the walls.
Yes, she's
I
saying
love Ben Kingsley.
Evaporated straight through the wall.
He just brings a level of class to every performance.
Sir Ben Kingsley.
Sir Ben Kingsley, yeah. Yeah. Love Mark Ruffalo plays his partner, Chuck.
His partner, Chuck, yeah.
And things aren't what they seem.
Yes.
He doesn't believe anybody. Everyone he interviews is like, no one has told us the truth.
Definitely mistrustful from the get-go of Kingsley and Max von Sydow, famous actor who also plays a doctor on the island. And Leo, he arrives at this conspiracy that there's secret, almost Nazi-like experiments going on with the patients. There's something really fishy going on in that lighthouse. Yeah. You know, like they're lobotomizing patients, against, all moral and ethical judgments, and all sorts of nefarious deeds going on this island.
Yeah, and what he sees could lead to those conclusions. Like I said, everyone seems to be giving him like almost practiced answers.
Well, and he's also there to track down a particular patient that he believes is incarcerated on the island as well. He
was essentially been looking to get to this island. He wanted a case to come to this island.
He was looking for any excuse to go.
Yeah, he's also a war veteran.
He is a war veteran. He was at the liberation of Dachau. So throughout the film, we're sort of privy to his flashbacks of the time when he was a veteran. He had to see some terrible things. He had to do some terrible things. So Teddy is kind of, he's emotionally scarred, and
it kind of plays in this
not perfect.
Yeah, it kind of plays into this part of what he's being told is that they'll find something in your past.
And they'll use it against you.
And they'll use it as a way to keep you here.
Of course he cracked.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, do you want to spoil?
Okay. It turns out that there aren't any secret experiments going on the island. There are no secret lobotomies. Ben Kingsley is not some terrible, evil doctor. Teddy Daniels, is that his name?
Yeah.
Is actually Andrew Ladis. And Andrew was submitted to Shutter Island, Ashcliffe Hospital, 2 years ago as a patient. And he was submitted for killing his wife after she murdered their children when she had a psychotic episode. I think she suffered from bipolar.
Yeah.
He can't live with the memory. He can't live with the guilt.
Yeah. He didn't get her the help because he was a heavy drinker,
Because
most
of the war.
likely because of the war. He moved them out of the city after she set fire to their apartment.
She's attempted to kill herself a few times before. She's attempted to kill the children a few times before. And he can't quite live with the guilt that he didn't get her the help that she needed. She was clearly crying out for help, and he basically ignored the signs. And ultimately it culminated in this really horrible day where one day he comes home from work, everything seemingly normal, to realise that his wife has drowned their 3 children in the lake. And she asks him to set her free, and he does.
Yeah. Well, first she says, like, oh, we can dry them off, we can put them in clothes, they can be our living dolls. Tell me these aren't plot points from a horror movie.
Yes.
Like,
Tell me that whole entire situation isn't the scariest thing you could ever imagine. Coming home from work one day to find that, to be confronted with that.
after
Tell me that is not horrific.
where every day you're also trying to drink away what you've seen at a concentration camp.
Yes.
So he
Nightmare right
cracked.
there.
Everything he's been through, this whole on the island, has essentially been a big. What's the best way to describe it?
It's a role play.
Role play.
It's a fantasy that they're allowing
He's living
him
in
to
this
enact.
fantasy where, because they even say there's a chance that he was definitely at Dachau,
Yeah,
but
that's
you might not have,
imagined.
because we see in his memories where they killed a bunch of guards.
Yeah.
He's like, don't think they think he's created this new identity, that is a hero.
Yeah.
It was and has went on to become, obviously he did go on to become a federal
He did.
marshal.
Yeah.
He's obviously not anymore.
He's not anymore.
And he's a very violent patient. He's caused
patient.
He has caused a lot of harm, and this is kind of like the last chance. The board of this hospital decided that if progress can't be made, serious steps are going to have to be taken.
They're going to
So
lobotomize him.
have to very like one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah.
So this is like a big chance. They're going to let him play through this entire scenario that he's been going over in his head constantly. Very, very risky. Very, very bold.
Yes.
And when it kind of makes me think when he's like, oh, everyone's result is very, seems like very scripted, very practiced. Well, it is. They're all playing a role.
It is. They're all playing a part.
To try and bring him, snap him back to reality.
Yeah. And you know what? It does actually work. Because at the end of the film, he does accept the truth. He does accept it. But it's so brilliantly done.
It's happened in it's going to happen in a future video as well, or a past one.
Yeah, it's so brilliantly done. And the scene in particular where Leo is, I'm gonna call him Teddy throughout the film. His real name is Andrew, but I'm just gonna call him Teddy. That's the character name that we associate with.
The patient he's looking for is Andrew later. So like he's trying to find himself.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So his mind just couldn't cope with the memory of what he did and what happened. So he has descended into this false reality where instead of being a murderer with a dead wife and 3 dead children, he's a marshal, and he's investigating this conspiracy on this island. Mark Ruffalo's character Chuck, his partner in this fantasy, is actually his doctor.
To keep an eye on, because you can't just let him run amok. Although the storm is part of the story, but I don't think they intended to be like a hurricane that it was. They kind of do lose track of him a bit. They lose a little bit of control of the situation.
Yeah, so Kingsley relays all this at the end, and he says, we know every single detail, everything. You've had the run of the place for 2 whole days, but we know how this inevitably ends. And I think the thing with the storm, which is part of Teddy's fantasy, it plays into the whole thing. I think they must have timed when they were going to enact this role play.
Yeah.
To allow for the storm so it could be a part of the story, for just that extra little bit of realism. But it is a very radical step. A lot of people might argue it's incredibly far-fetched. But it makes it one hell of a story.
Yeah, I love stuff the withdrawal. Like, he keeps getting shakes, and he thinks it's because they've been, one of his hallucinations tells him, it's like, oh, you at least tell me you're not smoking your own cigarettes. They think that they've been drugging him, but what it actually is withdrawal. His regular medication that keeps him docile.
Yeah. So this is definitely one of those films that it kind of benefits from multiple viewings. Because I've seen this film many, many times. I remember going to see this in the cinema with my mum and dad, and I will never forget the look on my dad's face at the end, the revelation when he flashbacks to the day at the lake, and my dad's face was just poor broken Jeff.
Which when he's dancing with his wife in the flaming apartment, she turns to ash. It's like, ooh, okay.
Oh, that's yes.
Very, very Silent Hill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, like,
Also, that whole scene, we'll have to try and put an image in if we can, but loads of people have compared that to a Gustav Klimt's painting. And
yes.
visually, it's very, very similar. I can't remember the name of the painting, but yes, I think that was definitely an inspiration. But yeah, there's definitely things to notice the more times you watch it. Like, when Teddy and Chuck arrive on the island, there are guards that are there to meet them, immediately kind of
nervous.
And initially, you know, when you first watch it, you think, okay, like the guards are acting a bit mischievous. They don't trust the marshals. Maybe they've got something to hide. And then you realise, no, they know that they're dealing with a very mentally ill man here who could maybe snap at any moment.
Yeah.
You know, they're on guard. Like, they've got the guns ready.
Picked up by one of the more senior security guards. The conversation as well, on first viewing, it makes no sense.
Yes.
It's kind of like that they've done this. He's like, basically feels like he's known him for a long time and has had this same conversation with him over and over again. It's like, well, he has. First viewing's like that. None of that made any sense, and then at the end, it's like on multiple viewings, it's like, of course, like you can tell he just doesn't believe that this is going to work.
No, he doesn't. He's very That
one conversation there actually tells so much about how much they kind of like how much hell he's kind of put everyone who works at this place through.
Yeah, exactly. They're all doing this purely for this one patient's benefit. There's
He blows up Ben Kingsley's car.
He injects and drugs, you know, one of the senior doctors. He assaults a guard.
And another patient.
Yeah, and another patient. There's a lady patient during the role play, they're interviewing several patients / inmates. And as soon as Dr. Sheehan is mentioned, who's Mark Ruffalo's, that's his real name. And as soon as he's mentioned, she kind of eyeballs Mark Ruffalo because she knows that's Mark Ruffalo. It's like one of those little details you only notice on.
It's one of those things we question, like, are the people they interviewed, are they patients or are they actors?
Well, this is a thing, because when I initially watched this, I always just assumed that they were actual patients who were just in on the act and were told, you know, they were coached into saying certain phrases and certain lines, like
there's
going
definitely
along
some of them,
with it.
like the woman that escapes when she comes back, that we know that is one of the nurses.
Yeah, there are. Yes, there are. But there's two patients in particular that they interview, and I just wonder, they could have been patients just trusted to, you know, go with it. But at the same time, I also think, like, that could seriously interfere with their treatment.
Yeah. Was that scene in particular you pointed out where, because she asks for a glass of water.
Yes.
Gives her the glass of water, cuts to her. She, like, drinking it, there's nothing in her hand.
No.
And then putting the glass down and it's emptying.
Thank you, Marsha.
I've always noticed, like, you look at, like, cigarette ends are always at, like, a different length, like, they're constantly growing into clocks are always slightly off, and you looked into it, and apparently that was actually a creative choice just to put the audience, just to let them know that something's not right. It was meant to represent, like, how many times they've been through this story, and there's little details that are different, and you also meant he has an aversion to water.
Yes, so the cup thing in particular, I mean, we had to pause it because we were like, what the fuck? You thought it could just be a continuity mistake or something like that, but some people have theorised it's to further disconnect the audience from reality, to kind of question ourselves, you know, what's real, what's fantasy. But yes, because we learn that his wife drowned their 3 children in the lake, he has a natural aversion to water.
Seasickness.
He has seasickness. So a lot of people have also theorised that when we just see her, like, miming the action of drinking, and because we're seeing that from Teddy's point of view, it could be because he hates water so much that he can't even conjure up the image. He has to mask the image of water out. So I don't know, it's still up for debate, but it's one of those really interesting, like, flyaway moments in the film, which it just kind of makes you question things, and it immediately kind of puts you on edge a little bit. Throughout the film, when he sees his wife in fantasies and dream sequences, Dolores, she's wet. She also bleeds. It's like, well, if she died in a fire, then why would she be wet and why would she be bleeding? Yeah. But of course, that all makes sense once we see the end of the film.
I was at the way he's lit. I mentioned this to you. He seems a lot of times he's very much lit from, like, the behind and the top, so it almost kind of gives him, like, this weird, like, halo effect, and it's almost dreamlike.
Very dreamlike.
Because we don't know because he is an unreliable narrator, but we are seeing this whole film from his point of view.
From his point of view.
How many of
totally.
the scenes we don't know if he's actually talking to people or not, or how we're supposed to interpret this, or if that's even what is really happening.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
multiple viewings are kind of necessary to try and break
Definitely.
down what is real and what isn't.
Yeah, and like you get little moments like again arriving on the island from the ferry, and Mark Ruffalo doesn't know how to remove his holster
Yeah.
because he's not a marshal. And Teddy does actually clock this. You know, at the beginning, he sort of
Yeah.
looks at him and gives him a bit of a weird look. But you know, of course, he wouldn't know how to remove a holster, how to remove a gun. And then again in the dream sequences, his wife Dolores is constantly telling him that, you know, you need to kill Ladis, you need to kill Ladis, like basically saying part of his subconscious telling him that you need to annihilate
Yourself. Like,
your true identity, carry on living in the fantasy of Teddy.
because he also keeps seeing a little girl, which we know is his daughter. We find out it's his daughter, saying,
Yeah.
you should have saved us.
Yeah,
Which you kind of assume that's meant to be someone from the concentration
that
camp.
he's seen, but it's actually his little girl. And again, the guilt. The
Yeah.
guilt, you know, you should have saved us, you should have intervened, you should have done something with Mummy.
The ending. People debate this, and I actually don't really feel like the ending is for debate. It's not like Inception where you could argue it to the end of time.
It's not up for debate.
X amount of time afterwards, because they say they broke through once before, about 9 months prior, but he relapsed, and that's
He
why
relapsed.
they've gone through this elaborate thing to try and finally
Yeah, this is the
shock
last
him.
ditch attempt.
He sat on some steps, Sean having a cigarette,
Mark Ruffalo comes to join him.
sits next to him, and he instantly starts talking to him as if he's Chuck, as if it's his partner, seemingly back into the delusion again. He looks over and listens to Ben Kingsley and just shakes his head, and he's taken away, and the last shot we see is of the lighthouse.
Yeah, he's going to be lobotomized.
Yeah, I always think, I said this, like, because in the story, the lighthouse is where this experiments and lobotomies happen. I actually don't think they happened there. I think that's just, they did that, that's part of the story. I think it's just a building, but I think they showed us that shot to make it crystal clear of what is happening to him.
What is actually happening, yeah.
But I think it's very much agreed on. Like I said, some people might on a bit debate this. He knows what is about to happen to him. Because there's a line that he says, like, would you rather die, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know if I got this right. Would you rather, like, die a hero or live as a monster?
What would be worse? To die a hero or to oh god, what is it?
Yes, to live
as a monster or to die as a good man.
Yeah.
Which would be worse? To live as a monster? Or to die as a good man?
And that's literally how the film kind of ends.
He's like, he gets, because then it's like, he doesn't have to be like, there's no like, oh, we come with us. If he was part of delusion, he'd be, and he wouldn't just get up and just instantly start walking down with them without any.
No. And then there's even a moment where Mark Ruffalo kind of, as Leo is being led away, Ruffalo is like, Teddy?
And
Not
he doesn't react.
quite sure if, you know, and I honestly think in that moment, Ruffalo probably knows.
Yeah, because I said he doesn't react to Teddy
No.
at all. Not even a twitch of the head.
No.
He knows, and he just doesn't want.
He doesn't want to live with the memory of what happened to him.
Yeah.
He can't live with it. It's why he descended into fantasy in the first place.
Because there's also no guarantee he might. No, I think the news when he heard that he'd relapsed before, I think he decided in that moment that he doesn't want to relapse again.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to have to fall back into this fantasy again.
I think, yeah. I agree. For me, there is no debate. He makes the decision then and there. He does not want to live with reality. He can't do it. He doesn't want to do it. He allows himself to be lobotomized. And I do think in that moment Ruffalo probably has a good idea of what's really happening, but he respects Andrew's decision.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of allows it to happen. And it is just such a really, really sad moment. But the irony is that the whole elaborate role play, it does actually work.
Yeah, because Ben Kingsley says, like,
it does work.
If this doesn't work with you, then everything we've tried here will be discredited. Because I think obviously the film positions him as the bad guy, but he generally wants to help him, and he thinks this technique could really help the most delusional of patients.
Yeah.
Let them role play out this. And
Yeah.
lead them to the natural conclusion that it's not
Yeah.
real. It's like that thing when he gives him his gun, he's like, the only way you get out of here is to shoot your way out. And he shoots Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
Nothing. We see, it's a great shot because you see the blood instantly go behind
In
him.
his mind,
Cuts-
he's shot him.
Cuts
yeah.
Mark Ruffalo. back, he's still there. The gun's fake.
The gun is fake.
And that's the moment that it's a kind of, this is, you must know, I think it's in that moment he's like, this isn't real.
What did you do to my goddamn gun?
I do want to talk about the lighthouse scene because it always struck me how very undramatic, how undramatic that scene actually is, because there's no music that plays.
It's just one room.
It's just in
a room.
one room, and it's basically Kingsley explaining
Everything.
what's actually going on, explaining to Teddy that your name is actually Andrew Ladis. Teddy Daniels is just an anagram. You made him up. You know, you were a marshal, you're not anymore. You killed your wife because she killed your children.
Yeah.
Goes through everything.
It's the patient that's missing. Her name is also an anagram of his wife's name.
Rachel Salondo, who is an anagram of Dolores Chanel, and Dolores was Andrew's wife. So Kingsley's just explaining all of this. There's no music. It is literally just in one room.
I was always like, because he tries to like get back to no, it's this, and he goes, no, yes, we've heard this, the storm, the this. It's
yeah,
like,
he has
heard
this, like, we've heard this so many times, like, you know.
My name is Edward Daniels.
I've been hearing this fantasy for 2 years now. I know every detail. Patient 67, the storm, Rachel Salondo, your missing partner, the dreams you have every night.
You were at Dachau, but you may not have killed any guards.
Like, we know every detail of this, but I just really, really like the decision from Scorsese in that, you know, you don't need a lot of dramatics in the filmmaking techniques when the dialogue alone is just so earth-shattering to that character.
Yeah.
It's like Kingsley in that moment is literally tearing down Leo's entire world. And it's like, yeah, we don't need to have any like big dramatic moments. Similarly, the scene at the lake, which is arguably the most heartbreaking scene in the whole film. Like,
there's no music in that one either.
There's no music in that. It's Leo
Again,
comes
like,
home from work.
I know you said you like, again, back to your because he gives it his all in that scene.
Oh god, I mean, the hardest scene to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Is
really hardest scene to act.
Yeah, he comes home. Wife doesn't answer. He goes outside. His wife's.
You know, the first thing he does when he comes home is has
a drink. Wife is all wet, seemingly not quite with it. He asks where the kids are, and we realise that the kids are dead. She's drowned them in the lake. And the scene where he runs into the lake, like desperately trying to pick up all three of his children. He tries to give his little girl mouth to mouth. He's got to drag all three of them back to the lawn. And then the three of them are just lying there, just dead. And there's this really lovely, lovely moment where he takes off her sandal and he just rubs her little foot. You know, it's like that's the only thing he can do to like try and give her a bit of comfort. Like his little girl's dead body. It's so heartbreaking. And then he kills his wife because the poor guy is just, I don't know, that's a bad day.
Yeah.
All it takes is one bad day.
Yeah, all it takes is one bad day.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could take these exact same plot points, edit them a different way, and this is a horror movie.
Look, I mean, I've written down some notes here. Like, I think on the nose, Shutter Island isn't a horror film. Because ultimately, I don't think its intention is to scare the viewer. There are some kind of scary moments in it. There's a few, like, the odd kind of jump scare in the film, but it's not to scare. It is to disturb. And I think it is to invoke a lot of empathy, potentially. But to me, it's scary to contemplate what your mind is capable of doing. It's scary to realise, you know, what trauma can do to you. It's scary to realise how guilt can affect you. It's scary to know that you'd rather be lobotomized than live with the reality of, you know, your past. So I think in that sense, it is a scary film.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary what it suggests, what we're capable of doing, and also, you know, the concentration camp sequences are really, really hard to watch.
Some really cool art direction.
Yeah.
That, again, just like really drives at home what he must have saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, like, a lot of what we're seeing isn't real. I genuinely think those scenes are.
Yeah.
The imagery is real.
Yeah. There's the irony as well, not irony, I guess, but I mean, when they liberate Dachau and the American soldiers are just looking at, you know, the piles and piles of dead bodies on top of children, on top of parents, and just awful. And then the scene where they gun down all the soldiers, the SS soldiers, Nazi soldiers. And then, they end up in just like a massive heap, a pile
Yeah.
on top of
Again,
each
it's
other
like-
as well.
Kingsley isn't sure whether or not that bit happened
I
or
think
not.
that-
I think
I
there's a
think-
good chance I think that could have happened.
I think absolutely. I think it definitely happened. And the scene as well where he flashbacks to when that soldier botched his suicide attempt.
Yeah. He just moves away his gun 'cause he's
Yeah,
trying to
does-
finish off
he's
jobs.
trying to
He wants to make sure he goes.
Yeah, I think that's
So-
real.
When you see, you can understand, why he drinks.
Yeah.
But that, on top of then what happens with his family, of course he's broken.
It's a series.
Of course, you're
Yeah.
never going to be okay after that.
Very sad set of unfortunate events is that, he saw some truly terrible things during the war. He fell madly in love with a woman who probably now suffered, I think, from bipolar disorder, had a massive psychotic breakdown, attempted suicide several times. Because he was going through his own shit mentally, he was not equipped to also help her with her problems. And unfortunately, it ended in the worst possible way. But I think ultimately what drives him descending into this fantasy is the guilt.
Mhm.
Because he says, doesn't he, near the end, where he wakes up from
Everything.
and Kingsley has to, make sure that
That you
he-
have to tell us.
you've got to tell us, what's happened here. Why did you make up Teddy Daniels? And Leo's like, because I can't live knowing that Dolores killed my children. Like, he can't. He can't. And why would you
He
want
blames
to?
himself.
Why would you want to live with that?
You reset, Andrew. Like a tape playing over and over on an endless loop. I hope that what we've done here will be enough to stop it from ever happening again, but I need to know you've accepted reality.
So yeah, it's a sad film. Like, more than anything, it really is. It's a great mystery. I think a lot of critics at the time thought that the twist was like a little bit too far-fetched or came totally out of nowhere.
Upon rewatches, the clues are there.
Oh, the clues are absolutely there. That's what I mean. It's definitely worth rewatching this. The more you notice, and there's a lot of questions that aren't, remain unanswered as well. But it is really sad. I think the twist is brilliantly done. The film doesn't trick you into thinking one way or another
No.
either. I mean, I don't understand where the ambiguity comes from at the end. Some people do think that, there was a conspiracy and that they succeeded in tricking Teddy into thinking he was Andrew and not the other way around. I've never once even considered that. That's
No.
bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. So yeah, I mean, do you think, is it a horror film or is it not?
I don't think it is. I think it's horror adjacent.
Yeah, but
It's like, if people come around and they want to watch something that could disturb them a little bit, I could put that on.
Yeah.
There's probably a few other choices I could put on that would really disturb them.
yeah,
But it's a good choice. I feel like
it is.
if you have friends who want to watch something a bit heavier but aren't into the horror genre, it would be a really good choice. And it's just a really good
Yeah,
story with some great acting and really good direction. I think this is like Martin
Really
Scorsese
good.
at his best.
yeah. Also, Shutter Island, the name, is in itself an anagram for truth and lies, or truth/denials. So I think, and Dennis Lehane, who wrote the novel, I think was really into his anagrams.
Yeah.
Also, I brought this up to you the other day, but I mean, the scene of Leo bringing his children out of the lake, bringing the bodies out, very reminiscent of a film called Don't Look Now, famous horror movie from the 70s, where Donald Sutherland goes through a very similar thing. His child accidentally drowned in a lake, and she's wearing the famous little red coat, and he goes in and he brings out the body and he's just despairing, like carrying her out. When you kind of put the images side by side, they're still side by side. It's I don't know if Scorsese was deliberately going for that. Scorsese himself is a horror fan, though.
Yes.
He's a huge fan of Hammer. He's been very vocal about that. I think one of his favourite films is The Innocents, which is another famous gothic horror based off The Turn of the Screw. So I think Scorsese was definitely borrowing from some of the classics for sure when he made this.
Yeah.
Some of the score is literally taken from the Shining soundtrack as well. So yes, horrific, but maybe not outright horror.
It's a film that couldn't exist without the horror genre. So he's taken things, he's got nods to a lot of other stuff. And I think it's one of the more unique of his films.
I think it is too. It is. And again, going back to earlier, like, Leo, I still think, if he wasn't in this film, I still think the film would be brilliant. But he does give it his all, and the scene where he comes home and he discovers what's happened is, that is I don't think I couldn't have done that.
He's a great actor. He is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't think he ever puts in a bad performance.
No.
But it's just because he doesn't make the film, it doesn't like.
No,
it's not
that
just gives strength to the film itself.
The film itself. I do just think though that sometimes he goes for roles that most actors would kill to do. Like, he wouldn't want to work with Martin Scorsese.
Multiple
but
times.
They're just not always necessarily suited to him, if that makes sense. I'm not taking anything away from the guy. I do think he's a really good actor. I just don't think that every
You feel
role
the same
he
way about
does
The Departed,
is-
don't you?
I do think he's a bit miscast in The Departed. I think all the other actors work well. Like, I totally buy Matt Damon as a crooked cop. Spoiler. But again, I don't know. Maybe it's just Leo and the Bostonian accent. Like, it just doesn't. It doesn't work for me.
This is one of my favourite eras of Leo.
Of Leo.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So, have you got anything else?
No, I don't think so. I every time I watch this movie, I find myself just kind of thinking about it for days afterwards. It lingers with you.
That's why I only watch it every couple of years, this one.
Yeah.
I have watched it a lot,
Yeah.
but it's not something I'm just going to put on to relax to.
Yeah.
But, thanks for stopping by, guys. It's on Netflix at the moment. It's on Netflix
Yeah.
quite often, this film, actually, yeah.
Yeah, is that how we watched it?
Yeah, that's how we watch it. That's before I realised that the DVD is most likely
Not
200
here.
miles away at my parents' house.
Yeah.
Give it a rewatch. Let us know what your favourite Leo film is that isn't Titanic.
Yeah.
To be honest, I still think he's put in better performances than Titanic.
There's arguments to be made for both sides of that.
Well, personally, I think he's better in Romeo and Juliet than Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, you could, yeah. But
I mean, trying to do the film, trying to do that dialogue
Potentially,
and act
Shakespeare.
through it.
Shakespeare's hard. Okay, Shakespeare is very
Yeah.
hard. I'm not saying that he was the best in Titanic. It just happens to
I think he
be
does a
the
better
greatest
performance
film ever
in-
made.
Catch Me If You Can as well.
Catch Me If You Can is wonderful.
I'm a big fan of Blood Diamond as well.
Love it when he does comedy. Blood Diamond was alright. It was alright.
You're not a fan of his South African accent. Anyway, on that note, while we go debate some more
Talk
Leo,
about accents.
we will see you guys next week.